So I'm going to ask in this order, starting with Jim and then finally with Anker, just to say a few words about themselves, and then we'll start the conversation. So Jim, go ahead.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Jim Kennedy. I somehow became the mayor of Rahway for 20 years. I started off as in high school working in a jewelry store in the central business district that was in a declining town. And at one point there had been 7 jewelry stores there, and by the time I was looking for something to do in life, there was one left, and it was the one that I wound up buying through Small Business Administration. So my perspective on things are a little bit different because I started off as a retailer that ultimately got frustrated and drawn into other organizations. We formed a local chamber of commerce where we tried to merge the business associations with the chambers to talk about the development of the town. And then after several years and that spinning its wheels and going in the same direction, we decided that I should run for mayor, and ran against a 20-year incumbent when taxes had been spiraling at that point in town, and the development of the town was continuing to deteriorate, and got engaged in the political side of the world, and then kind of brought all those worlds together and ultimately found our way through a changing world where the if it wasn't bad enough by 1978 when I was starting my business, where the cry from all retailers is always parking for starters, but then lands its way into the malls, and they cried about that for 15 years. And they had no idea how devastating business could be hit until the internet came along, and people like my wife put people like me out of business. The only people that are making any money are those in transportation, such as UPS and FedEx. So there's this. It created a need to recreate communities. Every one of these communities that have developed, particularly from about 1947 post-World War II to 1967, which were the thriving years of retail, have changed drastically. So you really need to recreate yourself and find ways. That led us into taking a hard look at utilizing cultural arts as an economic development stimulus, and it's what we really modeled Rahway about.
Thanks, Jim. Anthony?
Good morning. My name is Anthony Smith. I am Director of Community Affairs and Communications for Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District, and also the Executive Producer of the Lincoln Park Music Festival. I'm going to try to do this with velocity. There's so much I can say. My background is in marketing and arts and music, and throughout my whole life, everything has been with my family about celebrating through music, food, and the arts. At Lincoln Park, our mission is to create a safe and green, musically rich community in Lincoln Park. We do that through, we take a holistic approach in community development. We do it through pathways out of poverty, green job training, dealing with the food desert. We have a CSA, we have a community farm. We do housing development. We have about 88 units of need housing, some artist living spaces, and we do community organizing and public programming. With the public programming, which is at the heart of what we do, with artists in the forefront of that, we produce the Lincoln Park Music Festival. The Lincoln Park Music Festival, as you can see behind us, is a festival that we created to change the brand and image of Lincoln Park. We started, this is our 9th year coming up at the end of July. We started by looking at what is near and dear to New York's heart, which was music, amongst other things. And so we started to celebrate jazz, gospel, house, and hip hop. We started with the first year with about 2,500 people, and we brought them to a place which is the historic Lincoln Park that was being underutilized. We brought everyone together, and the first year we got 2,500 people. Now going into our 9th year, we have tens of thousands of people who come down to attend the Lincoln Park Music Festival. Part of what we do at Lincoln Park also is historical preservation. And the next slide. We know that we needed a community farm because of the food desert and people not having access to fresh produce, so we created the CSA. And we've been able to really serve over 100 families each season with this CSA. But at this historical site, which is a site that Abraham Lincoln spoke at, the site was called the South Park Presbyterian Church. It's on a historical landmark. It burned down. Before it burned down, it was a soup kitchen. So we felt that it was important to utilize the place in a special way to have this farm going there. But on top of that, we realized that this is such a unique location, and part of our creative placemaking process, you can go to the next slide, we really wanted to find a way to how to really maximize this space. So we use food as a way of sourcing and bringing people together. But one of our projects that we worked on last year, with some of our partners are in the room, with Rutgers University, Leonardo, the city of Newark, we created a mural project. Last year was the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, and it was when Lincoln spoke at this location in the 1800s on his way to do his inauguration. We said, let's create a mural, and let's call it the Emancipation of Music. And this mural is a reflection on how music is used throughout history, and the indigenous symbols that you see there coming out of James Moody's horn and out of the sack that the lady has on a cotton field is from Ghana, that means freedom. And so we use music. You know that through history, music has been used as a vehicle to soothe and to heal people. And so we came together with Rutgers University, Leonardo, and at Rutgers they did something really special with us. They created a whole semester class on the historical history of Newark, public art, and so that students could get engaged. And the students from Rutgers, the community, all of the stakeholders came together and they painted the mural together. And we did it in about a 4-day process, and that's what came out of that. The next slide that you'll see is our homework project that's happening out of the outgrowth of this church facade. We're going to have outdoor performance space where they will hold about 600 people. We'll still have a farm there, a CSA, but we'll have a concession stand there so that when people come to have and enjoy the show, they're able to source the food from the farm and have salads and maybe pizza and things of that sort. So we've been doing a host of many things as it relates to creative placemaking, but this is just a snapshot of who we are in Lincoln Park.
Thank you.
Good morning, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sheila McKoy. I am Director of the Transit Arts Program for New Jersey Transit. I've been with New Jersey Transit for 28 years and have had the pleasure of leading the Transit Arts Program for the last 15 years. What we do is we work with a group of engineers, planners, communities to create public art in our stations. The program started in 1994 with the planning of the Hudson-Bergen Light Rail System. The program was so successful that we decided to incorporate it in any station that we are rehabbing or new construction. How the program works is that we use federal guidelines that anytime there is construction going on, we use 0.5% up to 5% of federal funds of the construction project to fund the program. There is a state mandate that was created in 1978 to include any public spaces, and we use up to 1.5% of state funding to create artwork that's funded by state dollars. Currently, we've done up to 250 installations throughout the state of New Jersey. What we do is make sure that we work with the mayors, and the mayors appoint people that are part of the cultural affairs department, typically the business administration, and sometimes the mayor themselves. The premise of the program is to what we create to create a sense of ownership with the community, that once we walk away from the project, that there's a sense of pride that's created and that the community takes ownership for what we created for them. Often we leave the station and we don't come back after the construction process. However, it's often celebrated. Recently, just a testimony to that type of program, we had an artist that worked with the community in South Jersey and worked with the community for over a year, doing a lot of investigation, and his theme was the Jersey Girl. So he celebrated all the women that helped create this community. The station probably has approximately 200 images about all the women that purchased the island, that the first postmaster, the first female governor, and it's a celebration of community. I am told, and since we opened the station in October, at least once a month there's a reporter that's calling to find out how to be embarked on doing such a wonderful project. And the community is so excited. The day that we did the groundbreaking, one of the ladies who used to own the first inn in the community was in some of the imagery, and they were so excited about what we had created for them. Again, it's about a 2-hour drive, so we leave the station and the community. We have created a sense of ownership, which is the premises of the program. And I apologize, I've been suffering a lot of anxiety. I'm just getting my voice back, so thanks for your patience.
That was great, Sheila. And of course, all the questions are going to go to you.
I have a couple of my own.
So, David?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Leo, thanks for having me. Second of all, wow, I can't believe so many people showed up for this. It's so exciting. It's awesome. Creative placemaking is happening. It's the way of the future. I'm going to speak to you more from a real estate standpoint than anything else. I've been through the office boom in the 80s, the retail boom in the 90s, the industrial boom of the first part of the last decade. And then in 2008, everything started to collapse. And so I was, from a real estate, a business standpoint, it was really like a tidal wave, shocking. What's happening here? None of the old norms make sense anymore. Everything that you studied in school doesn't add up on paper anymore. The whole world's falling apart. What do we do? So I'll give you a little bit of history as far as I'm concerned. My family owns the 3 industrial complexes in the city of Patterson since 1978. They're in the historic district. They total about 400,000 square feet. We're bookending the falls. I don't know if you know where the Patterson Falls are, but it's the historic district. Patterson was the first industrial city, first planned industrial city in the United States, the cradle of the Industrial Revolution here in the United States. And some of the buildings in the complexes we own go back to 1840. So they started to build them 20 years before the Civil War, and they stopped around 1900. The facilities are grand facilities. They were used in the 19th century and the early 20th century to make rope, to make silks, to make linens, and it continued that way probably up until the 1950s when the industries started to head south, literally southern United States, and then eventually overseas. And from the 50s on, the complexes that we're talking about were used but from various manufacturers, warehousers, industrialists, those type of spaces. But it wasn't on a grand scale. It was the spaces that were broken up. My family bought them in 1977. They were all broken down. There was 3,000 broken windows. Nobody wanted them. Nobody was using them. And my father and his partner were in the construction business, and so they said the impetus for them buying the facilities was they needed a place for their workers to have, so they could hold on to their construction workers during the winter when things got slow. So they figured they'd just buy these buildings, fix them up, and rent them out. That worked well until about 2008, when everything started to fall apart and all the businesses were going out. Some people were there since 1960, were going out of business, everybody was downsizing. So it was, we decided, what are we going to do? We don't want to abandon these beautiful buildings. They're great buildings. They were great for so many years. What are we going to do now? And so we decided, my father was in the newspaper, actually quoted in 1977, that he eventually saw a Center for the Arts in these facilities, and it took 35 years or so in order to get there. But we decided that we were actually asked by a woman who is now my wife if we would donate. Her name is Donata, and she had run, she founded and had run art walks in the city of Patterson for 4 years, and never walked through our door until a couple of years ago, and asked if we would open up some of our spaces for artists for part of the 4th annual art walk at that point. And so we opened up our spaces for the arts, and it was just a fantastic success, and there was so much energy. We decided, you know what, this is the way we have to go. All the people that were coming through the space for the arts just loved it. They loved the space, they loved the arts, there was so much energy. So then we decided that what we're going to do is we're going to undergo a massive adaptive reuse project to convert all of these facilities into arts facilities, art-based facilities with space for artists and artisans and upstarts, business upstarts, and really build a community around the arts. And it's taken off so well that right now we can't build studios fast enough. We're 40 deep on people who reserve studios. I can't build them fast enough. And we're rapidly becoming the creative nexus of the Northeast. It's very encouraging. And I encourage you all to send me an email or to go on our website, give me a call, come down for a private tour. You have to see it. And this can be duplicated in any community as long as you have infrastructure enough and the wherewithal in order to do it. Thank you.
So one of the lessons here is if you want to find true love, buy yourself a building. For art space. Okay, great, thanks. Thanks, David. Anker, tell us a little bit about you and your work.
Well, good morning, and my story is a little bit like David's. We came, well, my father and brother and I, we came from Pittsburgh to Newark in 1975. My father was one of the founding faculty at the School of Architecture here in Newark. And Newark, at that time, nobody wanted to live here, if I dare say. Buildings were empty, being torn down, and but we wanted to be here to set up a design colony. So what we did, we found a toy factory, an 1890s toy factory in the Ironbound on Union Street, and rented space in the building, which was owned by Lewis Roberts Printing Inks at the time. The owners at that time thought, oh, this is crazy. Why would anybody want to work and live in a building like this? But then, after thinking about it, they thought, well, an architect and somebody here at the building at night, maybe it's not a bad idea. So we had the top floor of the building for about 8 years. Then in 1982, we got a note under the door saying we had 60 days to vacate the premises. The building was being sold. We were able to scramble and get 4 partners, buy the building, and convert it into an artist colony, a design colony, a work-live design colony with dividing each floor in half. So these are very large work-live spaces, 2,500 square feet. We actually have 11 of them in the building. We've got photographers, painters, landscape architects, writers. We experimented with music a little bit, but it's not the right building for sound insulation for that, so we are keeping it as visual artists and design. We would love to do a music building in Newark with a special acoustic control as needed. So anyway, this segues into another part of the work that we've been doing in Newark, which is with the School of Architecture and our own practice. I'm in business with my father and my wife, Ada Caro, Troy West. We have an architecture office in the building. And that is Newark-based projects as much as possible. This is a project that we do with the Newark Museum, which is called the Artists in the Schools program, where I work in different Newark public schools as a residency, teaching urban design, and we also do ceramics. This is a project where we're doing giant neighborhood plans of the city of Newark, existing conditions. This is, I believe, will be the largest city map of any city in the world. 1 inch equals 30 feet. It's going to be 300 feet square approximately when it's all completed. We've completed 22 out of 47 panels. And behind us, it shows a plan for the Newark Airport Railroad Station neighborhood down along Freelandheisen Avenue and Weequahic Park, where we show existing conditions, but we also work with the students to come up with a visionary plan. In this case, it shows neighborhood access to this train station in Newark, where you could walk off of Freelandheisen Avenue and get on a train, either going into Boston or Washington and all the sites in between. So we've been studying Newark for 40 years or so, and really know the city well. And it's just really a fantastic place to be an artist and a designer, even though there are challenges. One of the challenges we found in 1975 was nobody wanted to be here, which was good and bad in some ways. Now, in 2014, we found that there's not demolition of buildings so much. We've lost a lot of industrial buildings in Newark, but what we have is parking lot encroachment. If you draw a quarter-mile radius around Penn Station here in Newark, you'll see that everything is being demolished for suburban-style parking lots. This is an article in last week's Star-Ledger about this issue. But this image is another artist housing project that we did in Newark on Crawford Street in Lincoln Park, in Anthony's neighborhood, which is like the mini Dietz building. It's the Brandenburg Wagon Factory, again, 1888 building. And this was with the Crawford Street Partners we did this project. And they contacted us for some advice on what to do. They were considering doing Section 8 housing there, and I said to them, look, this is ideal for artist housing. The type of way we approach artist housing in industrial buildings like this is to provide space with a kitchen and a bath. We don't build out closets and rooms. There's flexible space where artists can do that. So anyway, we've done about 15 units of artist housing in Lincoln Park. And we've got the Dietz building. We're looking to do revitalization of Newark through artist housing and those type of projects. So that's a quick overview of what we do. And I have a 24-step program for how Newark can be revitalized. So we can get into that later if
Anker, you have some materials in the back, right?
Yeah, there's some neighborhood plans that we've drawn, an alternative to parking lot city around Penn Station, black and white plans that we've drawn, as well as a community garden vision and revitalization of Lafayette Street School Playground. Because Newark is great, but who wants to move here with kids and raise a family, for instance? You look at, where's the nearest playground and so on and so forth. So we're working on issues like that to, it's really grassroots what we do with the community. We have a neighborhood group in the Ironbound and different developers and other people that we work with. So anyway, it's very grassroots, but we're really ready to engage with the city, and I think anyway, we'll probably get into this later at the conference. Like how do you make these things happen? It's Mayor Kennedy from Rahway. You probably know more about that than a lot than I do. Anyways.
What I don't make up.
Well, we are going to get into this. Before we get into the questions, just a reminder, please silence your cell phone. And if you're not going to silence your cell phone, please have a ringtone that we can sing to. Okay, great. So again, going back to the theme of amazing projects that these people do. Let's just... So, going to the theme of connections, creative placemaking, it starts with partnerships. So, in terms of your work, your initiatives you've done, who was it most important to partner with to get things done most quickly? And I'm going to start with the mayor, and then go down the line here.
Well, in our case, we basically did a needs assessment of the community to see, where to go. It ultimately led us to the arts, but the natural pieces there were New Jersey Transit, because we had a train station that's 35 minutes to Manhattan, right at our doorstep, that was locally, not really appreciated greatly. New Jersey Transit came in and did a new train station there, which changed the dynamic. It gave us the ability to take a look at the whole housing structure, and we decided in our phase 1 of redevelopment that we were going to create 1,500 units in the central business district within hundreds of yards from the train station. Interestingly enough, there wasn't much public debate about it. Nobody really cared that much about the forgotten central business district. So, we started making these plans, and nobody showed up at meetings and yelled and screamed. And off we went. It represents about 10% of the entire city living in the central business district, which was part of the concept to support the central business district in the long run. Because the train station was there, it gave us the ability to provide market rate housing in and around the train station. The average rent went from about $650 to $800 in the downtown area to $1,650 to $2,400. Locally, it was more than a mortgage in the local community. It was hard to even understand. Even I was surprised. The bottom line was it gave us the basis to look at the other assets. The other asset that we had was the Union County Performing Arts Center. It's a magnificent facility that's 2 blocks away. It was the first $1 million theater built in 1929, and it was totally restored over a long period of time. After the restoration, and thankful to the county who engaged in it as changing the name from the Rahway Theater to the Union County Performing Arts Center, it gave us sort of an anchor, and really was a changing point in taking a harder look at utilizing arts as an economic stimulus. We did note that when we were having performances that were greater than 800, that all of the restaurants in the area were doubling their night for the evening, and that represented anywhere from a restaurant that was doing $2,500 moving up to about $5,000, a restaurant that was doing $12,000 to about $24,000, $25,000. So the restaurant people started to grow, and it became part of the dynamic that was changing in the Central Business District, and a reason to go there. From there, other partners engaged. The YMCA has taken their mission statement, taken a hard look at it, and decided to take the abandoned floors of the third and fourth floor of the YMCA and converting them into artist workspace. And they're coming close to the completion of that project by this fall, which is another addition to the downtown. One of the things that we found in having the big theater house was that in engaging in the foundation side and the donor side, it was difficult to, as a renting house, to provide creative art, and so we decided to do a remake of a building that was from the 1938 World's Fair. It was a Butler-style building that was ultimately moved from the fair to sat in Newark, New Jersey, in a lot that was owned by the Ma Bell, and then ultimately was rebuilt and wound up as a truck repair place in the Central Business District. We did a reuse on it and received an award for the best reuse last year. And now that is a 199-seat theater called the Hamilton Stage, and we do a lot of creative art there. There's a lot of groups that are it's engaging the community, and you talk about engaging people coming to events now in the Central Business District, from meeting places to local dance classes, and the school district is becoming more engaged in it, and the community is actually really using the Hamilton stage more so. Not to say that the UC PAC doesn't, but it's a different kind of venue. So we also have the Arts Guild in Rahway, which is a gallery space that puts on a considerable amount of programs and is a great value to the community. We're starting to find other art-related businesses moving into the area. We have a recording studio there that is constantly busy. And there's talk of another group that's moving in as a recording studio, and then rehearsal space as well. So, that's the community engagement has really taken off in the last primarily in the last 2 years, but the essence of.
Let me ask before I move on to Anthony. You said we started with the asset inventory. Who's the we and how did they come together?
The we was the city of Rahway and the city council. The city council, out of frustration. The interesting thing is, in today's market, it's much easier to try to encourage, because there's some great examples of many of the ones that people here have started. When you're going out and promoting the concept of the arts, in my consulting side of the world, we're working in Burlington City as well as Boundbrook, where we've created arts districts in both of those communities. So it really starts with the governing body to buy in, and in our case, the city council bought in early on and believed in the process, mainly because we had the Union County Performing Arts Center. It seemed to make some sense. But creating an arts area, and by the way, it's not all about facility. Rahway is an exception, because I think facility is something that you got to be very careful about, because to sustain it, it's very expensive. But there's so much you can do with just simple programming, and it's really the energy of the people that make the difference in how you can achieve this in any community. If you do an inventory, you'll find you probably have in every community abandoned buildings or buildings that are not being utilized. Many of them are on a city roll, and they're just sitting there waiting for somebody to wake up someday and go, oh, that would be great space.
Great, thanks. Anthony, who did Lincoln Park need to get connected with?
Well, we needed to connect to the entire community, and it started with the municipality. The way Lincoln Park came about, our founder and executive director, Adolfo Wilson, was working for RPA, Regional Planning Association, and they were looking at areas in New Jersey that were needing redevelopment, and they looked at Lincoln Park. So in 1998 or 99, we had a charrette, a planning session at New York Symphony Hall, and we invited all the stakeholders. I think, Anker, you were probably part of that meeting. And it was a 2-day meeting where we had academia, politicians, artists, community leaders, everyone in the room to talk about this area in need of redevelopment. So we brought everyone together, and out of that planning process came the thought of creating an arts and culture district. The bones were there. We had New York Symphony, Hall, New York School of the Arts, New York Voice Chorus, and City Without Walls Gallery. So subsequently, after that charrette, the thought is to create a holistic community. So we grew the arts, housing, and looking at a sustainable model that will last longer than just 20 years. So we had, for 2 years, once a month, community meetings in Lincoln Park. All the stakeholders came and they talked about design, talked about arts and programming and everything of that sort. And out of that came the development of the Lincoln Park Coast Culture District, a nonprofit organization that I now work for, to move that process along. And the reason we have our name Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District, because in the 50s, the 30s through the 50s, Lincoln Park was called the Coast, and it was the area where all the jazz clubs were in the city of Newark. It was the area where Savoy Records was, where they produced a lot of recordings. So anyone, before they went to New York to perform, they came to Newark. So Amiri Baraka wrote about it in a paper called The Barbary Coast, and talked about how rich Newark was in music. So that's when we came up with the idea of Lincoln Park, the Coast Cultural District. It's always been based upon partnerships and collaborations. As a small nonprofit, we couldn't do it without partnerships. And, so it has been at the forefront of everything that we've been doing. And the community has been at the forefront.
And when you, I'm sorry to interrupt, when you say the community, who are we talking about?
We're talking about the residents. We're talking about the stakeholders, which in the early 60s and 70s after the riots, Lincoln Park is surrounded by a whole bunch of brownstones and mansions. And it was the therapeutic community, actually, Integrity House and Cure, that kind of restored those brownstones and mansions and kept them stabilized. But in those meetings were people, residents, renters, business owners, and people who had a vested interest in seeing the community moving forward. All the development was happening at the north end of Broad Street, but the southern end of Broad Street, where Symphony Hall was located, and where Boys Chorus and other arts institutions, there was nothing happening there. So it was an opportunity that we saw, and the community was excited about seeing the movement.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Great. People like what you're doing. Now, Sheila, you work for an agency that, of course, is very progressive as far as the transit agency, but transportation engineers not known necessarily for being arts friendly. Some are, some aren't. But can you talk about what kind of connections, both in the community and in your own organization, that you need to make to be successful?
Yes. What we did early on in our transit arts program, when we first started it, is to engage a group of artists to work with engineering and consultants that were building the project. And with them, with the artists, we wanted them to come up with concepts that would engage the community, get the community excited about what we were building. There was often resistance, especially when we were building the Hudson Bergen Light Rail as well as the South Jersey Light Rail system, that there are sometimes resistance to community about transportation, especially 15, 20 years ago. People really did not want to get out of their automobiles. So with that, we had artists work with plans, and we would have community meetings. We would work with the mayors. We would set up certain time frames to come to the city halls, introduce our artistic plan that we were going to incorporate into the system that we were building to get them excited. And believe it or not, the plan helped to prepare the way for what we'll be building in their communities. It was a time when the organization was very young. As you know, New Jersey Transit was formed in 1980, so it was really a young organization. And we had some exciting ideas about how we wanted to develop transportation in the state of New Jersey. And it really helped to give the community a sense of pride about what we're creating for them. The ridership numbers on the Hudson Bergen Light Rail system has been so phenomenal, but that they really are desiring to take it as far as the Vince Lombardi, which was the original plan. With that, when we're building when we're rehabbing our heavy rail stations, which all communities want now, because it is a way to, one, bring people to the community, to showcase their arts. There's a group called Valley Arts. There's probably some representatives here from there that have been trying to work with New Jersey Transit to build art around our stations, because it does it increase the real estate value, as both David and James have said, and it it provides a sense of ownership to community. It provides cultural richness to the communities that we serve, and so it's been successful. It has been successful. Some of you know Vivian Baker, and she works with a lot of communities and doing transit-friendly villages and building communities around our stations as well.
Thanks, Sheila. It's tough when you can laryngitis.
Yes.
So David, the developer, the real estate guy, who do you need to connect with to be successful?
Unequivocally, the most important partnership that we have is with the Patterson Arts Council. It's a nonprofit 501c3 charity organization with an international reach of artists, numbering in the thousands. And because of that partnership, we were put on the map immediately. And we were just bound to be successful because of that right from the get-go. We are now looking at other cities. We're going to be rolling out the art factory around the US and around the world, tying all different art factories together. A member in Patterson will also be a member in New Orleans or Detroit or Berlin. And the Patterson Arts Council is going to be the advanced team, so to speak, that's going to hit the ground and form partnerships with local and regional arts groups so that the project will be a success before my plane hits the ground. There's just no question about it. If you're going to try to explore any sort of adaptive reuse of any sort of real estate, you may have to make sure you have your art core set and done before you try to do anything. Because if we tried to do this on our own without that connection, we wouldn't be successful. We would be out of business right now.
Thanks. Anker?
Well, our partners, our networking, our people, it's basically our artists that have chosen to set up their businesses in the Deeps building, and the Newark Arts Council is helpful with that as well. We've got some people that have been in the building for a number of years now, Rosalind and Sherman Drexler, very well-known painters, Brian McGrath, architect, Nell Painter, who's a writer and an architect. People, these people really keep us vital here at the Deeps building. There's also the galleries in Newark that have connected us with different opportunities, Gallery of Faro, City Without Walls, so on and so forth. Through the Newark Preservation and Landmarks Committee, we met the Crawford Street Partners, Tony Gibbons, where we did the Crawford Street Lofts, and the neighborhood groups, Ironbound Community Corporation, Saving Riverbank Park, and doing other projects in the Ironbound, helping us with some planning work that we're doing there. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts, the Newark Museum, and this is our network here in Newark that we're hoping to build on and bring some more economic vitality to the city, which we probably all agree on that it's a no-brainer. Artists are always looking to come into a place, maybe like Newark, where there is an opportunity to make things more beautiful, make things better somehow.
I'm going to the next question, just whoever wants to, jump in on this. Whenever you do a project, there's always something that you wish you could have done better, you could learn from. So staying on this theme of connecting to the right people. When you look at some of the work that you've done, or initiative that you've done, is there some organization, group, individual that you would have thinking about that you wish you would have connected with sooner, that you think could have made things move faster?
I would say that we were a little bit late getting into it because we've always been a private concern. But over the course of the past, I would say 6 months, the relationships that we're forging with the local nonprofits that have already been entrenched in the city of Patterson, from church organizations to other arts organizations that have resources. For instance, right now we're building an art cafe, and we're partnering with St. Paul's Church in order to do that, so that we'll have a cafe at the art factory. At the same time, we'll be training people from the city that need skills. So they'll learn restaurant skills and then hopefully be able to transform into actual employment at the art factory or in other restaurants around the city. And so we're really going strong into those types of relationships right now. I think it was necessary for us to start off the way we did. We had to start off because we weren't getting any support from any financial institutions. Nobody, everybody wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. It was untested. There was no way we were getting financing. So we really had to keep our nose into the books to make sure that what we were going to do was going to be sustainable. So we really didn't have a lot of time for that kind of outreach. But now that it is successful, and now that we see it's growing leaps and bounds, now it gives us the opportunity to really reach out and bring more of the community in. And it's really starting to pay off handsomely for the community in general, to bring the kids in, to bring the people that don't have opportunities. We have big metal and wood shops that we actually built for our artists, that now we're able to partner with local organizations so that they can bring not only kids but also adults in to teach them skills. We have the wood shops and the metal shops already. They're not being used exclusively by our artists all the time. Might as well use them for community outreach. So I think that we were a little late to the game there, but it's really starting to pay off for everybody in the community.
I was going to say, well, we're always looking to have a relationship with the media, the press, in promoting the work we do, but also hopefully averting demolition of historic structures and the spread of the parking lot city, which I mentioned earlier around Penn Station. So that's something that's always kind of on our minds is how to get the world involved in the conversation here in what we're doing in Ironbound, and it's so it's the press and now social media and so on and so forth. We're always thinking that we should have done it a little sooner than when we get around to it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to tackle a question?
Well, in a different way, as an eternal optimist in need of great help, I live in a world of happenstance, and I believe that missed opportunities, I don't find them necessarily being missed, because so much of the inertia of the arts movement needs to be kind of happen. It kind of evolves. It's not in the analytical side of the brain. It's something that's more creative. So I don't really see any really missed opportunities. I think on a larger scale, Anker mentioned one that I think many communities can, and it's on aging buildings and how to look at those buildings, particularly in areas in and around train stations. Because part of the issue in the arts is, now everybody wants to get in the game, and you don't want to oversaturate the market. So there's a need to kind of come up with a greater plan, and that's what I like about the organization of what you're attempting to do. Because at some point it's about marketing these things that you do have in regional and areas. So I really don't, in our case, I don't see really many missed opportunities. But I think the caution is on the physical side of the buildings.
I'd like to add on to what James said, because a lot of the buildings around our train stations are historic, and there's a historic site preservation council who looks at what we are doing to buildings when we are rehabbing them. And early on when we started doing our planning, and we would get the art plan and we would select the artist that was going to work with communities and build the art, it would kind of be voted down by SHPO, which is the Historic Site Council Preservation. And so we needed to figure out a way to kind of overcome that obstacle. And what we did was start including them in the process of selecting the artists and looking at the whole structure, being mindful of the materials that are used. It doesn't compromise the historic integrity of the building. And that relationship building has worked with what we're trying to create for the communities.
To echo with Sheila's, so Lincoln Park is in a historical district, so some of our challenges that we have was with the Landmarks Commission and getting it approved. As many of you know, arts can be very progressive. And of the other challenge that we had was an intergenerational challenge, because we had topography, or I mean not topography, but the people in our community was from, we have 4 senior buildings, we have elders in our community, and what was happening was we were very progressive with our efforts and the things that we were doing, and sometimes we would hit a wall because it was a shift and change that was happening too fast and everyone wasn't ready for it. And so what I see now is that I would have taken a different approach and really pulling more of our elders or people who have been in the community for a long time and having them being part of the process.
Okay.
One more thing I'd just like to follow up is just, everything everybody said is just right on target. You know, because we weren't able to get financing from outside, because no banks wanted to touch us, because what we were doing just didn't exist anymore, it didn't fit their model. We had to go a lot slower and transforming the complexes into the art factory. And I look back now, and I find that, you know, thank God, just like Mayor Kennedy said, it's not missed opportunities. What we missed is a couple of disasters. Because had I had the money to do what was on my plans to do, it wouldn't have worked. And so, you know, you learn, just because it's really a grassroots thing. You have to have the people around. What do you need? What do you want? What's going to build a community? What kind of community you want? What do you want in this community? So it's not really something that you can put down on paper. You have to live it. And that's why, as a matter of fact, my wife and I actually moved into the factory. I used to live in Glen Rock, and now I live in the factory, because it's really something you have to live and you have to feel it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so I just wanted to follow up. It just ties in with everything everybody says.
But be careful, you may wind up with sculpture there. Well, part of, you know, interesting point, passion is such a great part of this. It reminds me of the restaurant business. I often wonder why those people work so long in these kitchens, and you know, that whole world of art as food is taken on a whole new thing. But I think the most difficult part is controlling the passions, because passion sometimes it can be illogical. But what's great about the movement is that so many people are engaged in it, and from so many different disciplines. And now, you know, there's focuses like this that really take people like me that are half crazy and try to make some sense out of it. You know, so it's good stuff.
Well, you know what, I've got a couple more questions, but I think this would be a great time to open it up to the audience. I think we have, I understand we have 3 microphones in the room. So here's what I'd like you to do. When you stand up and ask your question, please raise your hand and the microphone will come towards you. Just introduce yourself very quickly, and just ask, just for the sake of time, to be fair to everybody, just ask a short question. Thank you. So why don't we start on this side of the room, and then we'll move our way over there. So we've got a person all the way in the back there. So. Wow, it's really high up there. I think that's a different zip code. Oh. Is it working?
My name is Sarah Scully, and I was wondering if the panelists could talk about the role of food in developing their projects. I know this is a lot about arts and transportation and planning, but I keep hearing about food, especially from Anthony. And I was wondering what the vision around that was, and kind of the role you think it will play in this subject.
Well, for at Lincoln Park, our tool that we're using as a form of art is music. But in our community, music has a connection to food. Food has a connection to music. So it's part of just the culture of how people come together and how they celebrate and how they convene. So we understood the importance of that. So food plays a major role in that process for us.
I think it's an excellent question, and that's one of those things that I was just referring to as far as a potential disaster. If we had implemented the restaurant concept that I had in the beginning, it wouldn't have worked. It really needed a lot of feedback from the community in order to see what they want. And so that's why we got more involved with the local nonprofits. We're talking about getting more locally grown food in. We're talking now about making some of our roofs green roofs. And what do people really want? And but it's extremely important to have the right. You need food. You need a good mix. You got to have the right concept.
Food has it has a vital part in the whole movement, not just on feeding people, but even Inked and art. Some of these artists they're doing different kind of programming around art venues that are of a very, very high caliber. The food piece is essential to it, because part of the sense of community is people want to have, this is time off in many cases, where people are coming to enjoy a show, or whether they're going to a gallery, that there's places to eat. I know in the Burlington model that we're using, which by the way is the home of the great art organization Art Pride, David, I have a great idea that I want to talk about later about the waterworks on the waterfront. You gave me some great ideas. But in any case, the first group in was a $20 million hedge fund that is primarily based around food. And I know they opened the Monk Room here in Newark, and they have Porta down in Asbury Park. They're doing Porta 2 in Jersey City. They're doing Porta 3 in Burlington. So there's a whole movement around the food. People are the first guys that really get it, because if you can bring people to an area, such as the model in Burlington, there's a 17-acre piece of property that we brought in on an architectural landscape firm called Olin out of Philadelphia. Olin did the work in Annapolis, and they did Battery City Park, Wagner Park. They did Herman Park in Houston, the arts piece, and they incorporate art into all of their plans. In the venue there's going to be open space for around 7,500 people, and that brings in entertainment, and that's where food people really come into it. This past week, although the attendance was very slow, they had a small attendance, but it was the first year, in food trucks, and they had these gourmet food trucks come in that I think even the people who put on the show didn't realize the level of art form in the food trucks, from the creative names of the food trucks to to the whole thing of feeding people. So I think the opportunities are certainly there. It's a matter of really marketing them and getting a better sense of how they fit into the art movement.
And before we if anybody else wants to speak, David, can you just say a little bit more? You said the right mix. So how do you, especially from a real estate development standpoint, how do you know when it's the right mix?
It's the right mix when you listen to everybody that's coming around and you start to get an idea of what they want. And so when you start to see that there's a lot of people that want a certain size studio, for instance, that's where the demand is for that kind of studio. When you have a lot of your artists asking for sculpture areas, then you build a sculpture area. When everybody starts saying they get really tired of walking down the street to go to Burger King, that we need a restaurant, we need then so you just follow demand. Just talk to people all day long, and don't try to force anything. Don't try to make your own vision work for everybody. Just listen. It's all about listening to the community.
Thanks. Anker or Sheila, do you want to talk about food?
Well, it's interesting what David said, because in working in Lincoln Park on the Crawford Street lofts, it's like, okay, this is great studio space, this is a great place to work, but where do you go to buy some garlic and a green pepper or whatever in that neighborhood? And working on some of the neighborhood planning in that neighborhood, well, okay, let's try to attract a business there, but I guess it really needs to come from a grassroots thing, like David said, because you go to great efforts to bring in a business, and then it either succeeds or fails. Without the grassroots support, it's likely going to fail. I mean, in the Ironbound at the Dietz building, that was one of the food is sort of what made us feel okay there, because it's like whatever happens, in the neighborhood or the city or whatever, okay, there's great food. We can walk down to the corner and buy groceries. I think in 1975 we were eating a lot of squid, calamari, you know. It was, so anyway, we got into the local food trends. Now we're trying to develop a community garden in the Ironbound like you guys have in Lincoln Park, because that's, you know, where it's at these days. Growing your own food is where things are headed. So you're right about how do you force something? It's not a good idea to force anything because it's likely to fail, you know.
And just real briefly, creating a destination to great restaurants and having transportation lead to those places that are destinations for great food, and creating a lot of the farmers market around transportation systems, where as you get off, you can purchase your produce and get back on the light rail or the bus to take you back home. Or you can take the train to the destination, to a great restaurant like the Ironbound has tons of them. And as we see, there's a whole development going on Market Street to great destinations for food like the Dinosaur Barbecue, Chick-fil-A, and a couple of other restaurants. So creating a destination that leads to great food.
Okay, great, thanks. Before we get to our next questions, I just got to note, since there are a lot of questions in the audience, I'm just going to ask for every question if only two of the panelists could, and we'll make it a competition. You know. So where do we go to next? Go to left of. Okay, great. Go.
Thank you. Your project sounds really exciting. My name is Janice Talley. I'm the planning director for Montclair Township. And I think I commend you on your exciting projects that you've presented, and I was very happy to hear about them. But my question is, can you tell me a little bit how you address the problem of parking, people who, once they get to your destination, those who choose not to use public transportation, and how you integrate public transportation into your projects as well?
Okay, well,
I'd like to answer that if I may. That's on our Achilles heel, is the parking and the transportation, and that's why I was happy to meet Sheila here, because we have something to talk about. Our facilities is the historic district, and they were built when there was just horse and buggies. There wasn't any cars. There wasn't any need for parking, and we kind of feel over in Patterson, and at least in the historic district, kind of like the redheaded stepchild. Everybody else got light rail. Everybody else got good, nice parking lots. I mean, Jesus, you know what I would do for that kind of parking? You want to I mean, just send some our way. We'll give you an industrial building. You send some of that up.
Well, that's good news, because we have a lot of it, and what I'm thinking is for Newark should get into the business of municipal parking. They collect the revenue and manage it, and because what you have are private business people setting these things up, making a lot of money, but in our case, in Ironbound, it's a little bit of a bad reputation. You walk out of Penn Station, it's 5,000 cars, a little bit of an eyesore. Anyway, it needs to be planned. That's something that it needs to be planned very carefully, and that is maybe the question of our times here in the Northeast. Yeah, I guess it's a long walk to the art factory from the train station. And yeah, so
it's 11 blocks, 11 long blocks.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. And just a point of information, two of NJ Transit's best weekends were to arts events. I think last year the Electric Daisy Festival and Bamboozle Festival had one of the highest ridership levels for any weekend. Okay, so who's next? Go all the way over to the right. Okay, let's go over to the right, and then we'll come back again. Meredith, you're going to need to speak up a little bit.
We can hear you. And I think that's
Well, we can hear you down here.
My question is, I'm hearing an enormous amount of statistics or the economic impact that creative placemaking is having. Restaurants are doing very well. I've been out to Patterson just this past weekend. We love this space. We love the building, the art factory. We loved everything about it. My concern is the economic impact, or how we're generating economic impact to support the artists themselves. Are we creating markets for people to buy the art so that they can afford the studios that David is building? And I'm also wondering, because our concern in Jersey City for a lot of our groups is audience and venues. But I'd like to hear more about support for artists, because they can't afford studio space and they can't afford to go to the restaurants if they're not selling their work.
Well, we hit a nerve there.
Well, you can divide it first between visual and performing arts. The performing arts side is a little bit easier from the perspective of the artists getting paid. From the venue side, that's the downside, is paying them in order to sustain the facility. What's happening in this region, because it has so much in performing arts, that many of the performing artists, that are doing the loop or the route are it's not that they're getting overpaid, but for the return on the investment from say the UC PAC, for instance, it's gotten difficult because many of the organizations are funded by much better than other groups. For instance, they'll remain nameless, but in some cases there's venues that receive $500,000 from a particular person. When you're going to hire an artist, and normally they would get $15,000 or $20,000, they're often getting now $25,000 and $35,000. So it's not equal depending on how you receive your funding. So it puts a damper on it. But in terms of the artists getting paid, that side of the world it seems to be fine. On the visual art side, which is really the more difficult piece, there's a few things, and there's some great examples even internationally on this. I mean, I always looked at, I was in Berlin when the arts district was forming there, and it started off with thousands of artists more or less squatting in an area, and the traditional thing happened. After a while, they made it the coolest place in Germany, and then they got thrown out. And only the elite artists were able to survive there. So there's a need to create in these models areas that are affordable to artists. And much of that in I think New Jersey particularly is primed for it, because so many of these central business districts really, it's vacancy after vacancy after vacancy. The trend of opening retail stores is changed forever. So there's cases where you can market buildings for people to live in those spaces. I think probably a great example of it would be Lambertville, where that occurred. You had some sort of order of arts, and that's debatable, in New Hope, which was in many cases more tchotchke than anything else. But on the Lambertville side, it became, some sophisticated art on that side of it. I think a great model is Frenchtown, where along in Delaware there, where the buildings are not terribly expensive. I think Bound Brook has a great opportunity for it because of the flood over all these years, which has been remedied now. You can't give away some of these buildings, so it opens opportunities, and I think part of that is niches. But I think we need to be careful, and you should gear them towards. My efforts in this have been where there's a need for transit-oriented development, where you have top development makes the most sense from a marketing perspective and the networking of arts as a regional entity.
And Anker,
in Newark, one thing that's been happening, which is very interesting and exciting and vital, is gallery spaces on Market Street near Washington Street that have been gifted to artists conditionally while greater redevelopment plans are in place. Gallery of Faro, case in point, and the Newark Bike Collective. So the developer of that site, I think, has essentially said, look, you guys can use this space while we're developing our plans, as long as you provide some sort of public programming, gallery space, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, how a visual artist can support his or herself, and it's okay, so you're at the Patterson Art Factory and you're making your paintings or sculptures or whatever, but maybe a restaurant will open up and some other businesses, so maybe the artist ends up working in the restaurant. A lot of our artists have day jobs or other jobs and then come home and work on their work. Not all of them, but that's the way it is with visual arts. So I guess incentive developers, you need enlightened developers and enlightened city government people to say, okay, we're going to do some gifting here of some resources. I think it's a little bit like a mushroom. How do you get it to grow? You can't force it to grow, but you put the spores and the conditions in the right place, and hopefully something will bloom.
Okay,
Just a
great.
follow-up comment, be really brief. I think also it's focus. I think that when you're focused on economic development and you're looking in terms of the community and restaurants and housing, that may be in fact what grows. So I think all I'm asking in a sense is, can we incorporate a focus that will really support the people who are creating the art itself that is being used to create.
It's a great thought, Meredith, and just as a reminder to everybody, we do have the peer-to-peer workshop sessions in the afternoon, and these kinds of things are a great opportunity, because I'm sure many of you have good answers to these questions as well. I think we have time for one more question, and maybe how many? Okay, you've got the electronic talking stick, so.
I do. I happen to be from Leonardo. I own an art gallery and art isn't selling. One of the reasons I'm here. I'm curious, having been in real estate development prior to having an art gallery, how do you get financing in this very difficult economic time to do these wonderful projects?
You don't.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay.
Well, I think there is an answer to that, though. The Lambertville model, the reason I mention it is because and it's changed. In the early, I can remember going down there, meeting with the mayor many years ago, and there was a building for sale, and I think it was like $36,000. And I brought in some investors, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And recently, one of the fellows that was there had forgot about this, and he was telling me, "Oh, I stayed in Lambertville at this great place," and I reminded him of the building, and I remember going on Godzilla or one of those sites, and the building was like $395,000 now. It was listed. The point is, the buildings can, depending on the timing and the inertia, can pay for themselves. There's a difference between what appears to be successful Lambertville on the first floor. You have to understand that very, very few communities in New Jersey are really making much money on the first floor of what was traditionally retail space. The impression becomes the reality, because on weekends you'll have thousands of people there, and the markets that probably are doing well, I can tell you, the little ice cream stores and those type of things. The artists, there are models that can be set up for subsidy. If you want the amenity of visual artists in your town, you may have to start looking at this in a whole different direction than what it is. And as far as the space, it's going to be the cheapest space. The live space becomes affordable, to the person that has invested in the building, and ultimately the building carries. That's the object of, and that's when you're financeable.
Hey, Leo, can I comment on that?
Oh, Rich, Michael? Oh, no, Pat Morrissey from Hands.
So I'm with Hands and the Valley Arts District on the West Orange border. I think Garcia's answer is right, that there isn't a source. And the other part of that, and we've got to create one. We got to create one through some sort of public-private partnership, maybe with like New Jersey Community Capital and New Jersey Economic Development Authority, something like that. I mean, this is what I deal with all the time, is trying to finance and then refinance real estate, which are venues for artists, artisans, innovators, theater, restaurants. The other thing about driving economic development with arts-related real estate is, Anker, you and I talk all the time, but you can't rely on the spores and the dirt. I think you got to be really intentional about controlling the real estate, and then who do you want to recruit? Who do you want to recruit to build your creative placemaking model and create a situation where the tenants of different venues are synergistic with each other and are bringing business to each other. And then the financing, of course, and the ownership has to do with keeping rents affordable permanently, right? So that those artists, innovators, artisans aren't just, levers of rising property values. And then everybody knows what happens, right? If you're not intentional about
Great, thanks. Now, I'm told that Jane's train is running late. Is there anybody from Amtrak here? Oh, okay, well, I was going to say it's their fault, but since they're in the room, so it looks like we have we have time for 2 more questions, and we'll still have a 15-minute break. Where should I go, Zenobia? Okay. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Marissa Benson. I'm the masterclass producer right now for Art All Night in Trenton. I hope to see you all there. My question for the panelists is regarding festivals and their importance to creative placemaking. I would love to hear you all describe the importance that festivals have in creative placemaking, and also describe the ways that the impact of festivals can be mapped, tracked, and increased. And last but not least, whether there should be a statewide consortium for festival managers so we can all share best practices. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get to who wants to respond to that? Anthony, do you want to talk to that? And then
Okay, that's a big question. For Lincoln Park, the festival business is the hallmark of one of the biggest projects that we do. What we enjoy much about the festival is a reflection of the voices of the community. Our festival has grown, and it's not just what's on the stage, but it's what's happening in the park. It's opportunity for entrepreneurs to have their crafts to sell. It's food and craft vendors. We do so much with our festivals. I think that the festival, the Lincoln Park Music Festival in particular, has a great economic impact in Newark and in the region, as a social and cultural impact. How we track a lot of that and look at the statistics, we do surveying during our festivals. And we survey people on just demographic questions, and we always were interested in reducing our carbon footprint because Lincoln Park is about 5 minutes from Penn Station. So New Jersey Transit has played a great role in servicing us and getting people to the festival. We probably should have a consortium of festivals in the state of New Jersey. If you look at Newark, Newark has tons of festivals that happen during festival season, and mostly ethnic festivals. if you from June through probably September, there's probably about 20 or more different festivals that happen in the city of Newark, really showcasing Newark. And our festivals have helped Newark to become a destination. People come here just for the festivals, and it's the only vehicle. I'm not going to say the only vehicle, but it's the vehicle in which the community gets an opportunity to show their craft. The entrepreneurs, and also for local and emerging artists to get an opportunity to perform. So for us, the festival, as I said, is the voice of our community, and it's what's really telling the story about who Newark really is.
And Anthony, could you also speak to the second question Marissa had? It's really kind of the answer in the so what question. How do you keep the festival from being just a one-off? How do you make sure that it becomes part of something bigger?
What we've done so that the festival is not a one-off is we created the project of the church facade, actually. Because the festival happens once a year in Newark, and people travel from all over to come, always the last week of July, so it shifted the brand and image of Lincoln Park, where Lincoln Park became a destination. But it's not enough just to have it during that weekend. So we find other avenues in which we can program throughout the year around the festival. We have a program called Music Speaks, where we travel to different venues throughout the city of Newark, where we still have the life of the festival going on. But because the festival is in an open space, we don't have our own location like it's a performance space. With the new project that we have that's going to open up in 2015, the church facade, it gives us an opportunity to have legs with the festival. The festival will happen in July, but we'll program from April through October at the smallest space that's located in that same location. So it gives us an opportunity to, it's not just a one-off, it's a season.
Great.
Sheila?
Yes.
Because I'm fortunate enough to wear another hat and work with the Newark Arts Council, I think what's important is partnering. In October is Endless Arts Month in the city of Newark. So there is the Moody Jazz Festival going on.
Yeah.
There is the Dodge Poetry Festival going on. And so is the Open Door Studio Tour, which is an opportunity for people to tour all the gallery space throughout the city of Newark. Partnering with other people that are trying to do the same thing that you are doing is critical to the process, and it will create opportunities for you all to collaborate to make sure that you're not just a one-up, that you continue to create the momentum every year. As we know, in October with Open Doors and the Moody Jazz Festival and the Dodge Poetry Festival, there's tens of thousands of people that visit the city of Newark. If you could continue to create the momentum, people will visit, and as they're celebrating 25 years of Field of Dreams, you build it, they will come.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. All the way, yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Colin Chambers with the Urban League of Essex County. We're located here in Newark. My question was for Anker. We're working on a revitalization project on a playground. We had mentioned earlier that we had done some work on that. If you could just speak to that and maybe how to incorporate bringing artists into the community to help with small businesses, the educational portion, and then, of course, local engagement.
What neighborhood is this playground you're doing?
Fairmount.
Fairmount. Well, we're looking at doing renovating the playground at Lafayette Street School, and most everybody's excited about that. And the Trust for Public Land has a program for playgrounds and green space in Newark. I don't know if you're in touch with them at all, but they're really pretty solid and have a good track record, and they're ones to get involved with. And in terms of getting artists out there in Fairmount, I guess the Newark Arts Council is a great resource, and then Gallery of Faro and City Without Walls, they have artist registries too. So you could put together some sort of project with a call for artists, and I'm sure you would get a lot of interest to do a mural or a sculpture or garden, whatever it is you might be thinking of doing. So it's, and then the Newark Museum, of course, is another resource. I mean, I don't know, Sheila, if you know how many artists there are in Newark through the Newark Arts Council.
I'm not 100% sure.
I was told it's in the area of like 300 artists in Newark, and so anyway, out of the 300, there's actually quite a few that are really quite solid and professional and high quality work. So I don't know if that answers your question, or what is it that you're looking to get artists involved in Fairmount, I guess. So I think through the Newark Arts Council is probably the first place to start. Yeah.
And the second I would suggest is the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, where there are 7,000 artists throughout the state of New Jersey as well as nationwide. And they house the registry of artists in every single art meeting. We work closely with them and the artists that we get for our projects as well.
Great. David, or anything, do you want to say anything? No? All right. Well, I think this is